Well, welcome everyone. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the 29th and final meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 12th, and we'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Strategic Project Manager with the city. Our co-chairs, Fred and Jose, are going to facilitate tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. I'm going to take a moment to go over some meeting logistics. This is a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the city's transition webpage under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning, ASL and Spanish interpretation available. To access Spanish interpretation, you can click on the globe icon at the bottom right of your screen. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom right of your screen. For committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks in attendance can follow along. And please remember that the meeting chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A feature, and they will still become part of the public meeting record. With that, I will pass it to Jose to review tonight's agenda. We can go to the next slide. Thank you.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Not loaded.
After committee business and public comment, tonight's agenda includes 3 wonderful big items. First, city leadership connections. We will reflect on the city's written responses to GTAC's recommendations, debrief the co-chair meeting with the new engagement officer, and this week's session with the council governance committee. And finally, we can preview next week's session with council. Second, we will reflect on the city administrator's budget recommendations and consider any response to share with council and the city administrator at the March 19th council session. Third, a member round robin to share our final reflections and vote on the final report. Next slide, please. You ready? Okay.
Sorry about that, technical
No.
difficulties. But no one indicated that they cannot attend today, but otherwise we expect full attendance. We do need to approve the February 11th meeting summary. Does anyone have any corrections before we entertain a motion? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
So move.
Nita moves to approve the minutes. Second, Bill seconds. Thank you. Any objections? Okay, so I consider that approved. Next slide, please. Our final order of business is to review our working agreements for one last time, just in case anyone forgot them. Number one, discussions challenge ideas rather than individuals, offer constructive suggestions, approach different opinions with curiosity, seek to understand, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work, arrive on times and be prepared to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers. Keep multitasking to a minimum. Keep focus on the objectives of the meeting. Utilize co-chairs to know additional topics for discussion by submitting topics in writing via email. Next slide, please. Honor the decisions of the group. Contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best needs your needs. Step up, step back, collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. Embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools. Probably not anymore. Use I statements. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it over to Julia to introduce public comment.
Thank you, Jose. So this is the time we have held for public comment. Folks are invited to spend the time. Double checking real quick. No one has signed up ahead of time, so this is the moment for awkward silence while we just once to give public comment, you could raise your virtual Zoom hand. Okay, thank you for that moment. I guess I was gonna normally list the ways people can give public comment to the transition. But I think at this point that public comment would probably, still you could call 311 as a community member at any time. Or probably give public comment to council. With that, I'm gonna give it back to Fred.
I would just like to say I'm disappointed that we didn't hear from Janice Thompson one last time. Hoping she started us out, could have wrapped us up. Janice, if you're listening, I'm disappointed. We have until.
Thank you.
We have until 6:45 PM, not AM, to check in about city leadership connections. If there are any big takeaways from this agenda item tonight, we can share them with council and the city administrator at next week's council session. We can start with the debrief of the February 14th city written response to GTAC recommendations. I know we've all read them. Do folks have any reflections about the city's response?
Seem pretty amenable, and like most of it is in some stage of consideration. Just pretty encouraging.
I would concur with Juliet, and I really like this format.
Yeah.
I thought that this was extremely useful. And you know how community groups and neighborhoods always say that things go into a black hole. One of the things that I would recommend is that if there ever is a committee to do anything, that they use this format for kind of like the sort of the feedback loop, which could change. You know, you could start it right at the beginning after the first meeting, and then it could morph. So I was very, very pleased. In fact, I kind of like forwarded it to a lot of people on my, on my email list who I'd bothered for 2 years to read and respond and fill out surveys. And I got lots of positive comments back from folks. So I think with that, it was not just me, it was other people saying it was cool. It's cool.
Yeah, Destiny.
Thank you. I also liked this format. I think it was very pointed, answerable. I will say that it's exciting to see the implementing and planning and the color coding. I do want to call out that the city administrator recruitment efforts, I think, needs a more public dialogue of following a formalized recruitment process. I think acknowledgement is not good enough. I think they've spent money with Modus recruitment not to use that practice and at least put a little bit more weight into its emphasis of paid services. Just is not, it's not fun when we're also reading budget cuts. And I think, again, it sets a standard. We went through a public, accountable, city-informed transition. The city administrator should not be exempt from that. This is not a private business. This is a government responsibility. And I think also it's exciting to see a lot of the city budget office really adopting a lot of these changes and implementing it. And I will call out that it seems like there still needs to be some leadership coordination about what role works where, what budget goes where, to really coordinate those efforts between the city budget office and the Office of Civic Life and, you know, the named staffers. So I really hope that they're working together to really fulfill these goals.
Excellent. Jose?
Thank you, Destiny, for pointing that out. I also have qualms about the city administrator process. We all love Mike, but Mike is ready to retire and he's being extended and extended, and we really have a process that we've talked about and put in place so that we can avoid just extending and extending. So I'd love to the city really actually go after a process and get us a city administrator that we can have for the next 4 years.
Lori?
I know I haven't been in on a lot of the conversations with city council, but I was happy to see that there's a plan being put in place for a strategic plan, that there's a project manager, and I haven't heard us talk about it very much. either or emphasize it. And I just think this one is just really important. And I'd love to see when we talk to city council that we really elevate versus just read it off as a line item. And so I'm happy to see it's going. I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that when we get to the governance committee's presentation and colloquy we had with them. Anyone else? I'm looking at the screen. Bill?
Yeah, sure, Fred. Connecting it to the governance committee, at the governance, I'm not finding
Segue.
it had, yeah, but unless you'd like the segue.
Oh,
If we like this format, I ask myself, is this something that might be adaptable to be responsive to an interest that the governance committee had in how to constructively be able to access public comment and respond to it?
somewhat with the, like the color coding to know that this is done, this is pending, we're working on this, or, you know, forget it. What a stupid idea. So- Yeah, that might even work in the budget, online budget inputs.
Mhm.
I don't know what, but we talked, and Terry, there's some tools for citizens to play with budgeting and the like, and maybe if somebody, you know, went into a dedicated fund and wanted to put it into something that it wasn't allowed for, that would send up a red red screen or something like that. Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, it's a good tool. Jane, thank you. Anyone else about to me, it sort of got foreclosed by, or, you know, as Destiny was saying, by the budget document. And just, well, here we are without a strategic plan in place, dealing with major decisions that have to be made about program cuts, efficiencies, and it's hard for a new council just now getting acquainted with the various revenue streams and expenditure items to reach a consensus to prioritize what's worth saving
Without the strategic plan.
without a strategic plan. Because that's where they get together and together weld a unified vision of what their priorities are as a city, as a council, with the mayor and the administrator.
Yeah, I think that's worthy of note when we get to talk about it at the next council meeting.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Who else? Oh, Juanita, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that it would be nice if we could leave some final, recommendations or areas where we feel that, like, for example, what you were talking about the recruitment of the new city administrator. Because my perception during the meeting is that they are in a really vulnerable position, because it seems to me that, like, it's almost like a reflection of where we were as a committee when we started to meet for the beginning. Like we didn't really know, and it was difficult to get the information that we needed. When I hear also saw the other meeting about the budget, and they were repeating, several members of the city council were repeating their concern that they were not getting the information about the budget, the detail that they needed to make decisions. So they're giving them just bunches of things but not the details that are needed, or the past budgets and how they were established, so it's a lot of things that I can see that they're having a difficulty with. And their enthusiasm and their asking questions, that you were answering regarding the governance and the developing the new committees and everything. Obviously, to me, the sense is that they need help. So, we're leaving, this is our last meeting, but perhaps for the last meeting to leave something in writing. So, at least to provide some support as they moving forward. I know that they're constrained just as like we were with a lot of the laws and regulations that apply to the administration of the city. However, I think that it's important that I think they're going to have to figure out how to get better advice, legal advice, because, but that's my personal opinion. I don't know, nobody has told me that, but I mean, I just seeing the reactions about the questions that they were asking.
Mhm, mhm.
It's very interesting. So that's my thing. And hopefully, and there's other areas that I'm concerned about, like, the staff making decisions about, things that happen in the city. For example, the Oregonian had this big article about staff making the decision to approve, this, contract or permitting this, corporation to do business in the Port of Portland. I think the name is the Senate and Senate Corporation, and they're using, they're doing some work in the, by the river. And the Oregonian also had a piece of opinion saying, in their opinion saying that they think that the city needs to counsel and needs to leave staff to use their knowledge and their expertise in making those decisions. However, and again, this is only my concern, I believe that when we're talking about issues that impact the environment and the situations that are going to impact the future of our children and the quality of our environment, I think it's very critical that the city council establishes through legislative action the parameters in which staff. It's not that we don't want the staff to use their expertise, and we recognize that and we respect it. And they need, that's why they're there, because they have expertise and experience. But however, some of those decisions needs to be made within certain parameters that protects the city future. And to me, that was an example about how can things get out of whack because there's not a lot of oversight, and that's what it was happening in the past, and nobody's to blame for that because it was the way the system was established. I mean, even if they wanted to do it, they couldn't do it because the system didn't allow the governance to really operate as governance, but they were mainly administering the different departments. So, but things like that, I want to make sure that it stay on the record, and then maybe we can talk for the next meeting, for the meeting with the city council to leave something in writing about those issues. That's my.
I think those are great ideas, Juanita, and I think that brings us into the maybe a discussion about, unless anyone has other comments about Mike's and the transition team's, the administration's response to our recommendations. Let's move to the meeting, was it Monday afternoon with the governance committee? And any observations? I was so happy that so many of us were able to attend and to participate, to contribute to the dialogue with them. I thought they were asking fabulous questions, some of which were way out of our purview, but still, it was exhilarating to me to see them applying themselves and trying to explore how to best govern. Any other any other state comments here, Amy?
Well, I also was so excited to see that committee meeting and their previous committee meeting where they talked about reforming the advisory body system, and they're so porous and all the way on board for a lot of the stuff that we said, because I think a lot of the stuff we said was common sense. And I just appreciate that group of people. And it was also great that they were on board with some of the changes that we've identified about community relations, like the website being fixed and making it easier to interface with the council agendas, and that they weren't dismissing that stuff, because when we met with the previous counselors as GTAC, we asked them to consider those recommendations, and we were just like batted away, like absolutely not. So it was very heartening to hear them take up these charges with like a lot of excitement.
Yes.
So I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm one of those people who can't get to meetings in the daytime anymore, but I watched most of it, and I was just struck by how much more relaxed it was than, I don't know if it was because it was with the old council or it's just that we've matured and we've built a relationship with them kind of over the last couple of years. But it just seemed more relaxed, more like a conversation. They did seem really open-minded and like they were kind of going with the flow instead of being sort of defensive or rigid. And it just seemed like really we have formed a relationship with them and they see us as a resource in a way that the old bunch didn't. And I hate to lose that momentum, but of course, there's nothing in the budget about, where do we go from here?
Jose?
I will say that there's been comments made by a lot of them that they will still continue to reach out, so don't be surprised if you
Right.
get an email, although I already had to email someone and be like, I don't have this email at the end in very soon, so this is my other email. So if people reach out to you, if you want to share your own personal contact information. I know I've done sidebars with staff for the city council. They're interested. They are very open to not just going the status quo and doing things different. I mean, we are kind of set up to change things, so why not change things? Even with the budget recommendations that they received from this administrator, it was very, for me, gave me a lot of hope to hear them push back and be like, no, why are we cutting services if the whole point of the charter was to find redundancies, and where is that? And those are exactly the kinds of things we've also been saying. So the last 3 months have felt very different.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
and I think back to some of the people that have left and I wish they were here.
Yeah.
Anyone else here? I don't feel, Destiny.
I think for me, it was exciting to have that conversation and such a specific focus of governance committee. Like this is what we wanted, right? A strong committee to have dialogue with counselors to flesh out ideas. And I think they might be aware of it, but like that's the goal, right? Like you bring invited guests to talk about real practices and how do we make policies and how do we make legislation that serves people. And so I think that was a great model. I think definitely being more flexible and being vulnerable, which is hard, especially like with such a budget concern and, still figuring out collaboration. I think I'm hopeful that counselors will continue to invite their communities who got them to these elected offices to provide input and also like reach out to GTech and the transition team. Like Julia Meyer has really seen this whole transition happen, like as resources to express that maybe we need to slow things down and be intentional about what we decide, because it will, like, that mindset of what we decide now can affect 100 years plus for future generations of Portlanders with the government. I think that needs to be the mindset for a long time, because they even said like there are sentiments that we have way too many committees. They're during the working time. How much are we going to allow public comment during full council? Like that is critical discussion that publicly needs to be had before cementing anything.
Yeah.
And I think really honing that in our next council session with them, like slow it down. We're not here, but like we can't just continue practice even though we already see the errors happening and we can't solidify that. Then we're failing the potential of the new government and the future Portland that we can have.
Okay, Bill and then Terry.
I had a couple of comments, but I can do one, defer to Terry, and do the other. During the governance committee meeting, I understood one of the counselors to sort of question the effort to try to explain the budget process to the public.
Mhm.
That that maybe the council just makes the decisions. Now, if I'm not, if having heard that, perhaps when we give our presentation to the city council, Jose, Fred, you could work in maybe a comment or two about why it's important to engage the public. I mean, I think to us, it's fairly obvious, but just a sentence or two might be helpful.
Sure, I think we've all gotten the notices, or if you're keeping track of the different budget, in-district budget sessions, listening sessions that'll be occurring for the next several weeks. And so we should all, even though our job here is basically done, still, it'd be worth it to participate, at least attend and see what how it's going. It'd be gratifying, I think. Terry,
Yeah, I apologize. I am temporarily hearing impaired, so I'm listening to you all
okay.
with the nice accommodation of Zoom about a half second behind.
Okay.
So anyway, apologies for that. The thing that struck me about the governance committee was generally, not so much our presentation or anything, is that they've got a lot of work to do in establishing rules and norms and ways of working
Mhm.
in the council. And there's nobody really championing it
No.
or
For expertise.
taking leadership. of it.
Yeah.
It's like the governance committee is there, but I'm not sure how that moves forward. And that's something that I think we should, in the full council meeting, mention that somebody has to drive that. You can't just let it happen because they'll fall into bad habits right away. So
I wondered, because Lori was there paying great attention throughout and taking a lot of notes, spoke with some folks afterwards. I know I had to leave, but she seems to be the staff person with she knows processes up left and right. And it may be that she'll be the one to direct them, we hope. Bill, did you have another issue?
Just with regard to our transition when our committee sets, in case that, in the event the council does seek some follow-up feedback, how can we enable that? Jose, you raised we could share our private emails, but I'm wondering, Julia, how long do our Portland, Oregon, or how long do our city emails stay in effect?
Probably to the end of March.
Okay, end of March. So I'm trying to think of how to facilitate, if the council, members want to ask us some questions, do we want to authorize, say, Julia to release our private emails if they ask? That's one option. I'm just asking.
I think they'll probably reach out to me as staff, and I'll ask everyone before your terms end if you want to be on that list of folks who can be reached out to personally.
Good. That's what I'm seeking, some way we can,
Jose,
I have the same concerns that Terry has with the rules and norms. I think it's such an important aspect of government building that is not as sexy as all the other pieces that they're working on. And I broached it with numerous then one-on-one conversations. But at the end of the day, the majority of Portland is not us. And most people do not care about the norms, even though they do, because the moment their public testimony is hard to give, or then they realize that it's important, but no one's thinking about it. And I think that's the challenge. So we kind of have to be a louder squeaky wheel because everyone's asking about homelessness, and those are very important issues. But to me, if we don't take care of this well now, we're going to feel it for like 10, 20, 30 years. This could be very long-standing. So I've been trying to plug as much as possible and working on these things and thinking about not just now, but the long-term effects of these things. Luckily, they've been very receptive, but no one's championing it because who wants to be the rules champion is not as fun, right? So
Bill,
Well, Jose, I was going to say, right on. I mean, this should be stimulating for the counseling way. I mean, this is like the first president and the first Congress. You have to be conscious that everything you do sets a precedent. So the council should be energized by this.
Jane and then Leah.
Any committee that you sit on, I mean, when I worked at the Garden and I had a board, we always had someone who was a champion of the rules. It was usually a legal person, or somebody. So, but in all honesty, there should be a champion of the rules. And it usually is a staff person until you get a council person who feels that they're totally up to speed and gets it. So I think that what we recommend is that the staff person that you mentioned step up and find the person with the right brain who's a council person and act as their sort of like training wheels that within 6 months they're up to speed and they feel like they know the rules. But quite honestly, in any kind of a system, any group of people, you need to follow the rules. I mean, and they're going to slow everything down and trip over each other's feet and their own feet if they don't do that, because the rules are a nice guardrail and they're handrails and they're wheelchairs and they're all kinds of things that just help you move along, right?
Leah,
Yeah, I can't remember who brought up Lori saying that she was there taking good notes, but did anyone actually speak with her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I've known her for years because she was the
Oh,
Secretary
great.
of the Senate.
Mhm.
Right, law degree, very smart, and worked with Peter Courtney, which says that she knows process, and
Yeah.
how to wrangle dissidents and, strong-minded individuals.
I guess I just asked because I'd be curious to know what her plans are from every interaction that we've had with her, which for me has been quite minimal, but I've always left feeling like this is a person who has an abundance of experience and knowledge in this and probably has a plan in place. So I think it might be interesting to hear what that is from her.
One thing that she might tell the council president, and I didn't bring it up in public, I guess I am now by saying it, but when we talked about how the committee system works with proposals through, and someone mentioned first, second, third reading, and that can be cumbersome, and they're like, well, it's up to the council president. As we agreed early on, we understood in talking to the transition staff that that's a very powerful position to decide what actually comes up in front of the full council. And so it's what you refer to committees and to which committee you refer it. And I didn't mention that, the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate will refer things to certain committees for bills to die, knowing that they don't have enough votes on the council to be adopted, and that there won't be the ability to discuss and develop a better, more popular formulation of that proposal through the committee process. And so it's going to come down to, that'll happen too. And so I think we shouldn't be surprised. And these new council members shouldn't be surprised if some of their best ideas don't go anywhere. But again, the only way for them to accept that is to understand that there are guardrails and rules to follow. So, Juanita, and then Zach.
Listening to the conversation, I'm wondering if we could offer ideas such as, maybe they can form a legislative committee that is formed by staff, but with advisory with somebody outside, experts. There has to be out there in the business experts who know about governance, from cities to states to whatever. So they have a group that is totally objective, or maybe not objective, but hopefully more objective than it could be if we only depend on the staff. And I'm not saying that the staff is going to be bad or do something or not accept maybe not the best recommendations to them. But on the other hand, for the staff, it's really hard because they've been operating in the same way for decades. And to look into this as a new system, it's hard to move out from what we're used to something new. And by having somebody from the outside that also provides them, not necessarily how to do it, but ideas and examples of what they can choose from and how to do that, the governance piece. Because again, I really appreciate the comment made about that this is something that is really important. It's like in the beginning of creating this new system for the city. So I want to put that out because I think it's really critical that we offer them some ideas about how can we mobilize. And maybe I'm wrong, and it's just my personal impression that they are kind of lost right now, but they're not necessarily lost. But I mean, they realize, like you say, Terry, that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. but it's important to have somebody who provides the expertise and
Mhm.
guidance in a way that is totally objective and doesn't have to do with anything, but what is the best system that we can develop for Portland?
Thank you. Zach?
Yeah, I was just kind of in an observation mode from that meeting, and a couple things jumped out at me. One was that they, I think, realized that their decision to have as many council committees as they do is maybe challenge the balance of this important work that we're talking about, right? Of like setting standards and like precedent of how the government should function. That's a lot of work, and it is, you know, wrapped up under governance, but they're also having to like do other things as a governance committee. And they want to do the kind of flashy things that they campaigned on. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's that realization that they're needing to take a back seat on some of that. So that was one observation. The other observation is kind of related to what we were talking about with Lori and kind of like the staff support. Like, there is not a whole lot of staff support
Right.
for the operational. I mean, I had a chance to talk with an old colleague who happens to be in the pool of the city administrator staff that supports the council. And while the title is policy advisor, it is almost entirely administrative work.
Any reasons, like clerical or?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that's a important realization for us as like thinking that the design in the charter was that there's going to be this pool of kind of a nonpartisan research and evaluation of policy that is really not happening because of the weight of this government. And therefore it's going to fall and default very similarly to what our old system was, which is policy is going to be done by a mixture of 1.5 staff or maybe 2 staff members that are probably campaign affiliates of those and maybe not subject matter expertise. So I just 2 observations from the kind of conversations I had.
Before we move on to Jose and I talking about our meeting with Julia, the engagement officer, I just have has anyone gone to any of the other committees that have been meeting? And I think, Amy, was there some sort of staff from the administrator's office or one of the service areas, deputy administrators, to assist the counselors in, in answering questions and maybe helping them understand maybe the layout of their particular subject area, committee subject?
Yeah, that's been the general.
Okay, so
practice.
maybe governance, I was thinking the governance
The fact
didn't
is that
have it, but that would be
governance
Lori
doesn't have
probably, I guess, because she's
Yeah.
the council,
Uh-huh.
council's boss,
Yeah.
Was it?
And I will say, as far as staff goes, they all added money to give themselves staffs, but they have all not spent that money. There's still counselors that are finding staffers that haven't staffed. And every office is kind of doing their own thing and
Right.
how it's being done. I was having dinner last night and with one of the staffers, and he was writing policy in his office for something. He was like so proud. He wrote his first resolution, and I was like, "That's awesome." So every office is maybe writing policy. So we don't know exactly, and I don't think they know. And even if they think they know, they don't know because it's going to evolve and change. And in 6 months, it might look completely different. So I do like that they're all trying to see what fits best and what works within this new system. And I hope they stay flexible so that it can change if they find that something else is needed, so that things don't fall back to old ways, like Zach said, because I'm also afraid of that, which is why I made the comment before about the city administrator. As much as I love Mike, I don't want to just fall back to old ways and have an administrator who's been our administrator forever just go the same way because it's easy, right? If it's right, if it's the right way, great, but not because we've always done it.
Julia?
During some of my peer city conversations, they impressed upon me the importance of staff having relationships with each other, whether it be just having lunch together or what, and that they had forged those relationships on their own and how important those were both to their own jobs, but also to the electeds. So I hope in their spare time that they can network with one another.
Good. Let's move on then. I think there's some takeaways here. Jose and Julie and I are going to meet.
Say one more thing.
Oh, okay. Ian.
That we as a group have a responsibility that is unique to alert people to what we've come to understand in our deep knowledge as individuals now that we aren't necessarily a group. And it seems like everybody's pretty on board with that. We have some unique responsibility or motivation to just even let our colleagues and activist groups know. There's activist groups that are doing such a good job of being in City Hall right now. And it's a lot of the groups that we spoke to over the last 2 years and a lot of the neighborhood associations. And maybe like, I don't know how we could do this, but maybe part of our parting thing is please, like, in addition to saying bye to the council, like sending something to our groups that we presented to and saying, these are a few of our documents that we think are super important. Governance is really important, or like issue areas that we don't see, like even just like bullet points, and say, you know, come find us wherever. But this is like one final punt.
Yeah.
To you all.
The transition
idea.
ain't over, even though we are. Yeah.
That's what it's like.
That's
We've all come to realize
I think that's our
that
issue. Yeah.
like, I wish sort of we had a year before the transition and a year after the
Yeah.
transition, as opposed to
Good,
only
yeah.
2 years before, but whatever. Yeah.
Hey, thank you all. Jose and I met with the new engagement officer at the end of February. We shared GTAC's engagement-related recommendations with her ahead of time. She had plenty of time to go over them. We recognized that there is a huge task in front of her and she will need time. She's brand new. She shared some of her initial to-dos, understanding the civic life budget and the new city budget process. Other big projects include figuring out who are the people doing engagement across the city and understanding what work has been done to assess engagement at the city. She's also looking at the advisory body program and appreciates our recommendations in this area. She acknowledged the importance of a District 1 focus. Overall, it was an encouraging conversation. She's an experienced leader who has good work examples to bring from Washington County. One thing I asked Julia to explore with her in the future is the relationship with the other citywide practices of those disciplines, including communications, which there has to be some kind of symbiosis there and collaboration. Do folks have any questions about our meeting or things you want Julia to explore with the engagement officer moving forward? Jose?
Well, before the questions, I did want to share one thing. I shared it with Lori because it made me feel really good about this person coming into a whole new role. I was talking to her about how sometimes some communities don't show up because historically they haven't been listened to. So now they're like in the habit of not showing up. So she told me that where she was before, the city started doing things in those communities like offering English classes, offering services, how to do this without asking for anything, and then building up that trust back up before they can ask. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that we want in someone who's doing engagement. So I love, that was my favorite part of the whole meeting, as you can tell, I've already shared it with other people. And it gave me a good insight into the way she thinks.
So was your hit really good?
Beg pardon?
Was the hit that you got?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with Jose. I thought that she's got fresh ideas. They are inclusive ideas. That she wants to make sure that there's that she's reaching and helping the city reach out to every aspect of the population and through various communication tools, some of which she's initiated in Washington County that Portland has not used that would be very useful. So hopefully she can survive the budget process well enough this time around to at least start some of those, start using those tools to help with engagement. I think in the interest of time, I will just say finally, as a reminder, we will be at council 1 week from today on Wednesday, March 19th. We shared our presentation last week and we will also submit the final report. Do we have any questions or comments about that before we move on to the next issue of the evening?
That meeting is at night, right?
Yes, 6 o'clock. So,
Yeah,
Julia,
council starts at 6. You're kind of the first regular agenda item, so my guess is a little bit before 6:30 you'll be up.
Good.
And the agenda item is 75 minutes.
I will be leaving at 7:20, much like Jose did at the previous meeting, because I have a curtain at the Schnitzer at 7:30, so. And I'm not missing those $80 tickets. No late seating. Okay, I'll turn it over to Jose.
It's being about 7:20. We have until 7:20 to discuss this next topic of information. The city administrators recently released budget recommendations. We wanted to take time to see if anyone has any reflections on the recommendations. There'll be common reflections, then we can share those with our council presentation next week. A couple questions for us to consider include, this is the first time there have been city administrators' preliminary budget recommendations. Are they helpful in promoting the earlier, more meaningful engagement GTAC recommended? Why not? Are the city administrators' recommendations aligned or misaligned with GTAC priorities and our recommendations? And if so, how? So anyone have any thoughts, questions, ideas? And go, Destiny.
I love this. The short and condensed one was great. The longer one was a lot to go through, and I think it's for best suited, obviously, for a typical audience that you would assume. I think it can be more refined. In a way that, like, I think Counselor Duffy said in 8th grade reading level, I don't understand that. If you want things to be consumable by the general public, you need to make materials that can be translated into multiple language and still have the same type of essence. But for like this specifically, I think for communities who really are engaged and, you know, bringing in more communities to be engaged, it's actually kind of nice to see multiple options of actual program and staffing, like proposals that the city administrator is coming up with. Like, there are some that I want to instantly engage with my district counselors about, saying like, oh, I'm concerned that this is up for cuts, or like, why are you adding this to the budget when we have such a deficit? Like that, I think is very powerful. I'm interested to see how it rolls out. But as a starting place, I think this is really exciting to me. And also the authenticity of like, this levy is expiring. This could be a solution. This is an option. Like, having that in the public, I think creates a lot more trust in the city, but trust can easily be broken if we fall back to old habits. And so I'm interested to see how this process moves forward.
Thank you. Leah?
Yeah, I'll second everything Destiny said. I love this. It's great to see everything offered as a buffet of options, not put out there as this is the plan. But it's, I agree that it's not, the way that it's written is not necessarily accessible to all or even most or even a small minority of Portlanders. But the thing that excites me about it is it seems like the core audience is city council, and that they are taking it and running with it. In that I am seeing so many opportunities to engage, so many listening sessions, whether city council members are doing it through their own offices or they're engaging with some of the organizations who Amy was talking about before, these community organizations and advocacy groups. And it's like we have a template, a blueprint for how to engage about it and to know what are the things we should be talking about. I think it's so well done. Also, one thing I'll say that I was glad to see in it, to be clear, I am never excited to understand that anyone's job might be lost, that a position is going to be eliminated. I think we're on the same page there. However, it was heartening to see that one of the areas that cuts were suggested were within the city administrator's office, specifically taking one of the deputy city administrators. I feel like I say that for our friend from way back, Bill, you know, in terms of his thoughts about the org chart. It was, it was good to see that. And I think, I'm glad that that's up for conversation now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane?
I love this document too. I think it's really, really, really good and quite beautiful. The colors are very nice. Somebody has done a very good job, and that's incredibly important. I think at the end of the day, it feels city-ish. You know what I mean? It feels like we're talking to city employees, people who understand the language, and And it's not, it's written for city council, I think. But if you were going to write it for me or my next door neighbor, the language needs to be simplified, my thought. And again, I think if we've got to remember why we changed the government, well, the city that works was not working. So really and truly, at the end of the day, we have to say, will the potholes be filled? Will shootings and violence go down? Will my park, my local park, get its grass cut and the swimming pool fixed? And so when you kind of like start to look at it from that angle, there is a big red flag to me, and that's the tremendous cuts in public works, which really and truly, from a citizen standpoint, is almost what the city is and does. So, and the only way that we can fill, according to this document, that budget, next budget cycle round, is to go to the public and ask them for a more tax increase. And I don't think that the way that we are right now, particularly federally, that there is the stomach to even see that. So I think that we might punt for a year. I would suggest before we even sent this out, we would punt for a year. We would not talk about tax increases.
Yeah.
We would just say what the reality is, that there's X percent, I'm trying to find that number here, which is really, really absolutely cool. The percentage of, what we need to keep everything going, and it's not going to be there. And we just should say that that's a concern for this year and for the council to think about. But I think that, again, we've got to write this document a little bit from the perspective of why transition is there. Because one of the things that I heard immediately after the city council gave themselves more staff, I got 42 emails from people that I had talked to who said, see, this fucking thing is more expensive than you said it was going to be. So,
Yeah.
that would be my caution in the document.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I generally agree as well. A lot of those things, especially since Portland is one of the highest tax cities in
Yes.
this nation. So other cities are making it work with less taxes. So anyways, and also it's come up a few times, and if Snow was there was a counselor that made a comment about how you couldn't really explain the budget at an eighth grade reading level like we suggested. And I disagree. I have a series of baby books called there's essentially STEM books for toddlers, and there's one on particle physics. It's like for toddlers. So if they can do that, I'm sure we can figure it out how to do the budget in eighth grade. They don't need to know every intricacy. You just need to be able to understand basics.
Where the money is going.
Yes, we just we need to make it so everyone can go on the website and learn. Destiny and then Julian. Oh, you get first. Okay, go ahead.
So related to that, Jose, I really like this document. It's really helpful to me as a person who likes words, and it is definitely intended for us and council. Most people aren't going to read a 28-page document. And I thought the publications for the transition, ranked choice voting and everything were so well done, and we could apply that same
Yes.
approach to the snack size or bite size and the various treatments if there's a budget for publications, although you could do it digitally if you had to. And I just think that approach would be a breath of fresh air.
I wanted to comment also on the comments of it isn't I didn't even think about it. It's meant for counselors, clearly, yeah. And you can really tell because in we talk about sustainability and climate here a lot in this, right? We're committed. And our goal is 0 carbon emissions. And I don't know what you see if it happens, but they keep mentioning parking tickets as a lost revenue, but they don't emphasize that. So then we can't talk about how are we going to even fulfill our own city goals if we're still hung up and not thinking past parking tickets? We're always going to have a budget gap if you, as city councilors, are not talking about new ways to increase revenue outside of taxes, because that's really what they said. But
Yeah.
most people aren't gonna find that overall theme in this. Like, you can't have it both ways if you're not actually making it consumable. And I really think the counselors are really gonna be able to translate this, but we still need the infrastructure itself to create that culture of, yes, we can make this palatable, because we know people are smart and we have created a system that locks people out based on language and based on intimidation tactics. So I really hope the counselors take this and, you know, this is the part of like committees, deconstruct what those things mean and inviting people to show up. So just a little add-on.
Thanks, Destiny. Fred?
I was, first of all, I remember when I was in legislative council drafting legislation and the law passed, both the House and the Senate, and signed by the governor, that we had to draft legislation, all these bills, the 8th grade leading, it was some kind of test, reading test, flesh test, I think. FLESCH, flesh test. And it was impossible because there's so many technical terms, and you had to break everything down into 1 or 2 syllable words, and that's not possible when you're talking about administration. And so it's rather, you can't really squeeze people into that. But I think what is missing in this, and that I hear people somewhat bemoaning or suggesting that we have in addition to this, is a primer. And that's something that's in the recommendations that we've made, but we're kind of past that now as far as this budget goes. We knew that this was the bridge budget, and it was going to be a tough road for everyone, including the administration with the previous, budget, and but the idea of continuing how much of the gap is to keep things going the way they are suggests that they're not. That Mike himself isn't looking for efficiencies. When Terry pointed out to me that there are 80 different communications persons throughout the bureaucracy, that seemed excessive to me when there's now 6 service areas and there's a centralized communication control. We've brought this up before in our meetings with the communications people and the transition team, and I want to see that gel better. Hopefully that'll come out after the listening sessions. We want better service, but more efficient service. And if that means that people.
Excuse me, and the deal is the media is going to get hold of it, and they're going to create the primer. They will kind of like say, these are the high points, this is what they're saying.
Right.
And the number one thing that they're going to hit on is there's not enough efficiency here. We've not looked really hard at cutting things from the budget, and it has to.
I've seen that, and there's been good media coverage of this piece. I've seen Shane, and then Jim Redden or someone else in the Tribune. And I haven't looked at Willamette Week, because did they have something on this unveiling, this rolling out? But it's not a primer for citizens.
It does make me think that. It does make me think that we need to maybe reshare some of, because we share our recommendations, but maybe it's time to dig up some of the specific research that we have done around some of these things and send it to them. Because I know I personally did the research on all the budget websites, and I had a table with all the links of all the city's budget websites from some sites that had nothing except a link to the actual budget that did nothing for me. And there were sites that had a 1-page primer, and then like a glossary of words and what they meant. And then it also had like a 5-page more in depth. So all these things we're saying are not out of nowhere. Some cities do this. Bill?
Well, thanks, Jose. It was striking me. I think a primer would be a good idea, because say when I'm reading the lengthy document, Mike refers to decision packages, and I don't really know what a decision package is. I mean, I can think about it, but it's a term. But that's just one example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also cognizant because I remember there was some discussion at one of our meetings. It was a year ago, or some months ago, that during the budget process, early stage, the bureaus submit and they prioritize their activities where they must have, they're important, like to have. This lengthy document, I think it's making some choices. I'd like to see that and then find out what changes, have been made. I mean, I was also thinking on your comment, Jane, about translating this into whether a pothole gets filled. One might build, maybe one can't be particular to projects, but one could say in District 1, if we project that there's X million dollars needed for road improvements. But if we have these budget restrictions, there's going to be a fraction, 60, 70, or 80% of that. So that means some of the projects, here are the projects we'd like to do in your district, but the budget limitations mean that some of these aren't going to be met. It doesn't particularize it to the particular projects, but it does get it more local. So an individual in a particular district can get a feel.
Thanks, Bill. Zach?
Just a random musing, which is I'm interested to see how this document, which is organized very around service areas, translates into our committees. We heard from Councilor Cleoma Lane asked at our meeting, how do we, when do we talk about budget? Do we talk about budget here? And the answer is obviously yes. You need to be talking about the budget throughout the year at every single council committee meeting. And that's where you translate service areas to outcomes and priorities that the city is electing people by.
Right.
And I am curious to find where those questions are incisive about driving into what Bill is talking about. What are we holding on to that is not essential, that doesn't fit this this mold of an outcome that we want as a service area. So anyway, that was just amusing and applying it to the question we heard from council.
Thanks, Zach. And I think that particular moment when we're talking about budget being talked about committees is the moment I saw that they realized why we had stressed that every committee needed to have every district. Because it's instead of just a committee talking about stuff, now they're talking about budget, and there's a district left out of that conversation in any piece. That's a problem. So yes, that's a very important distinction. Juanita.
Yes, I included, I remember that I included, and I'm not so sure if it still is part of the recommendations that, and the only reason I'm bringing that back is because listening to the concern about how to do community engagement and how do we keep the community involved. The experience that I personally had by going out there into the community and making presentations is that when you go and talk to people, people get interested and they ask questions and they engage. So that was a very rewarding experience for me. So I'm not, originally one of the things that I put on my recommendations was that I submitted for the full committee, was that the report, the budget and development and staffing report that was made, that should be published by the Oregonian and by the other local newspapers or any way that we can do it. But I don't know because I'm assuming if that was made with city money and the funds were used from the city to pay for that audit, that is public information. That's not private information. So I think that if the newspapers will present and explain to the public what is in this audit report, that is going to provide a lot of support for the city to engage more people in terms of where to make cuts or why are we going to be forced to make changes. Also, not only in staffing, but also in a lot of other ways that the programs are being funded. And this is again, this is a strategy to, again, to inform the community and to seek support for the new council. I think they need all of the support that they can get as they move through this process. So I don't know. I don't know if that is something that we can do, or does anybody, or if any of us would like to do it, or is something that the city needs to do. I'm just putting it out there. I would love to hear back from you guys. So you think? Stirring the pot.
Anyone else? Comments? We have about 15 minutes left. I kind of wanted to not bring back up, but one of the main themes we talked about, I think that came up over and over, is presenting the budget in different ways, essentially. Presenting the budget in ways that can reach the most people instead of just the people that are making the decision and those that have a vested interest. We want it to be able to be in community. What other of the main themes from this great conversation we have do you think we need to highlight to include in our presentation next week to council? Or is it just that?
You know, I know that it's not going to be possible because the first thing we're going to hear back is that there's no money and there's not staff to do it. But there has to be a way that through local community organizations in the city, we have to engage those districts. We have to, because this thing about we're just going to write this in a language that people can understand is not going to change anything. You know what I mean? Really, I mean, our experience is that when we went out to the community, people didn't know many times what we were even talking about it because they didn't hear about it. And it was something that it was already in the papers, it was on TV, you know, it was people were talking about it. But there's certain areas in those communities that this information doesn't get through. So we need to emphasize that if it's not the same model that now with the city districts, they can use the local organizations, community organizations with maybe one staff or maybe even the city councils when they go to and do town halls and they present this information. But it has to be a structure and it has to be, consistent. And happening in every step of whatever is happening with the city. I think that also not only will keep the city informed, but will gain a lot of support for the council, for the new governance to do the changes that need to take place.
So get creative with engagement. Bill?
Yeah. Jose, I have
Anybody know what they all
I can come talk to you.
Too late to talk to him.
I asked myself a conceptual question, which is, what is the purpose of the budget? I'm oversimplifying, but I recall at prior meetings, we observed that one should set priorities and then the budget follows. Our discussion is treating the budget as setting priorities. Now, maybe the way to synthesize that is to say, if when one's expressing this budget, one should identify what the priorities are or articulate what the priorities are.
Okay.
Terry?
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to just sort of say that the process was sort of shortcut because the budget office waited until the new council came in before really starting a whole new process. So the next year's can be quite a bit better. And that and the fact that it will connect to the community engagement piece with the budget advisory committees next year as well. So I think it'll be a little bit more integrated. There'll be more of a glide path into where we are now. And I'm frankly pretty encouraged by how far they went just this, effort.
Couple of months.
So.
Right.
Great. Leah?
Yeah. Thanks, Jose, for bringing us back to what are the recommendations we want to make. In addition to engaging the community and making sure we're explaining things. I think it's worth bringing up again, to Zach's point, about why the recommendation was made that there's district representation on every subcommittee, and the reminder that the budget is going to be discussed not just one time in the year, but constantly in every single subcommittee, in every single service area. It is the underpinning of everything that city council does. And I think it's just worth re-elevating that.
Mhm. Yeah. Amy?
Trying to forget my comment. I'm gonna lower my hand.
Okay, Fred?
Well, I think that Terry brings up that point, and Bill, you're talking about prioritizing, you make your priorities first and then you adopt a budget. And because we're in this bridge period, we don't have a strategic plan with, you know, new faces, new administration, more or less, new organization, that they won't be able to, some of the drastic decisions they're going to have to make. And we all have to acknowledge there are going to be some seriously drastic decisions, especially if the federal government really messes us up. And we dive further into a doom loop. So it's hard then to strategically plan and make those hard decisions. But at least they're starting to work on a strategic plan. I hope Terry's right about that and I'm sure that the budget process through the blood and guts experience of the next 5 months, 3 months, will evince that they've got to have a strategic plan and have got to better prioritize. Hopefully that we'll survive it into the next budget process, and then have all those communication tools and the community outreach that precedes February, March of 2026.
Thanks, Fred. Jane?
Yeah, I want to concur what Terry said. First of all, I think we have to say that this is fabulous. Whoever put this together, they need to know that this is fabulous. When I was going into schools and trying to put that sort of like, what does the city do and how does it run kind of thing before you can even talk about it changing, I went to the website to try and find some interesting information on the budget. Oh my God, you needed a PhD in accounting or something or another to be able to understand it. I mean, it was like 4 pages of all text, no color, no pictures, no pie charts, no anything. What I did was I kind of like said, this is the number. And I asked the kids to kind of like guess where the money was spent. Where do you think the most money is spent? And they were so smart. They all said infrastructure. You know, they didn't use those words, but basically again, after we'd done the presentation about what the city did. So I think that really and truly, if we can even get this, even though it's not for the audience, the community audience, even if we can get this on the web page, it really, really, really helps. It really helps people understand what the city does and where its money is coming from and where it's going. So I think, but we have to say it's really good. And I think that next year it's going to be fabulous. There'll be a strategic plan that drives this, the fabulous communication communication people and the community outreach person will get their hands on it and they'll make it make even more sense. So I do think it's awesome.
Thanks, Jane.
It's good closing.
Anyone else? No?
Yeah, me, I talked to my kid.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just want to emphasize the importance of addressing the issue. We understand that this year with the budget is nothing we can do, but emphasize the need to ensure that the strategic planning is conducted is in the best way possible. Because if they really engage those districts in the strategic planning, and they do truly, establish those goals and objectives, that will be those priorities, and that will be with the input of everybody in the community as well as in the city. So I think that is a very critical piece. If they don't do a good strategic planning, priorities will be set wrong, and that will be a mess. So I just that's critical.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, it helps inform decisions. Easy it makes it easier to decide on a budget if you know why you're deciding on a budget.
And it's
There you go.
plan.
There you go.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. Now I'll pass it to Fred for our final agenda item. So next slide, please. Oh,
Thank you, Jose. We have until 7:55 for final member reflections and to vote on our final report. As we look at the final report and discuss if there are any last minute amendments, and then the roll call vote occurs, that's the opportunity then for each of us, I think, to have a few moments to express in so many words or so few words, what the last 2 years have signified for each of us as individuals and as a group. So the time for substantive changes to the final report has passed. Julia's put it out several times.
It's really good.
But I want to commend, and I did not participate in the editing and the formulation of it. I was very appreciative of those people who bellied up to the bar and did that hard grunt work all the way throughout the process. There were constant changes and refinements, and people that weren't the main editors also participated in making some suggestions, as I understand it. And it's just wonderful that it was a great group effort, beautifully staffed. But are there any proposals for minor changes on the draft final report that was distributed?
Just gold leaf
Well,
on
I
the
have this new no, just-
Say.
Okay, and as soon as we get through this roll call, the sooner we can cut into the cake.
Yes.
Just a point. And so, well, hearing no proposed changes, does anyone have a motion to adopt the final report?
Yeah.
Jane does, and and Amy seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
The
authors.
The authors.
Well, it gave me goosebumps when I read it
Oh,
in its final draft.
so,
Yeah, it's fine.
Julia, you call the roll?
I mean, I could call a roll, or if folks would prefer just to
Let's-
like speak in the order you want to speak in, and just when you conclude your thoughts, if you can cast your vote, then I can just.
Okay.
Might be easier if we just did a little method to it and just go from Bill all the way around. Jose and I'll be last. You could be strategic.
That was
for me.
Strategic
Does that work? Bill?
Okay, yes, I vote aye for the report, so, and my overall impression is I'm just very impressed and pleased to have had the opportunity to work with all of you and get to know you. I mean, well, we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and I personally would really like to see our group continue in some fashion. I realize we're sunsetting, but hopefully there'll be an opportunity for us to get together and reminisce or also develop different, we on our initiative, group initiative, can still opt to contribute. But I think it's just an overall thank you. And I think we've made very constructive products and recommendations. So thanks again.
Thank you. Yes to the fabulous recommendation document. Love it. When I met over 2 years ago with Julia for coffee, she asked me to tell her why I wanted to do this, right? And I actually wrote notes because I knew she was going to ask that. And I said my number one reason for doing it was I wanted to help the city get charter reform done to meet its deadlines and stay on budget. I wanted to help the community understand. I wanted to enjoy and appreciate the talent and personalities of my committee colleagues, and I wanted to learn. And I will say that I am so happy to have done this work. And I just feel very proud of the work that we've done. And because we did. I mean, it's amazing when you think about it, the amount of work that had to be done, that got done. The city staff, I'm sure, are just, the ones that have left are still in their beds, so tired. And we have worked hard, and we did really good work in helping the community understand. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like you guys that sort of like made me want to stick with it and come to the meetings and do the work. And I have learned so much in these 2 years. I mean, I just feel totally and utterly honored to have had this PhD in how cities are organized. It's been brilliant on every level. And I do want a big shout out to Julia, because if you've ever managed projects or managed a big team towards doing something, you really just have to keep everybody on the straight and narrow. And she knows how to do that. She knows, and she doesn't miss a beat, and nothing is ever late. And I just feel very well schooled. So thank you all, and thank you, Julia.
Yeah, I vote yes for the final report. And I just want to say that it's been a great experience, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with each one of you. I think that, I mean, the best times for me that I truly enjoyed was when, and I think I was almost in every single subcommittee that we had. Yeah, was to be able to brainstorm and argue and discuss our ideas and bring the best of the group back to the whole group, so that was a wonderful experience. And know that we sometimes we never agree, but we were willing to be flexible and to go with the main team to do the best that we could do for the city of Portland. So I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity and grateful for being able to work with each one of you. I have learned so much. Julia, thank you so much for all the work that you have done for the group. It's been, I cannot tell you how much I learned and how much I'm looking forward to see how these recommendations and all of the work that we did comes to be alive through the city council work. Thank you.
I vote yes. And I was thinking about this, I went back to my ratty notebook I've been carrying around for 2 years. I went back to the beginning, some of the notes that I had. What is our agenda based on? What are our committee goals? How do we measure our success?
Yeah.
Would it be a good idea to have subcommittees? When could we have subcommittees? And thinking back to some of the early meetings when you talk about, I'm kind of a harmony person. So when you talk about the arguing, the meeting that we extended like 3 times. And I remember I was on vacation and I was in the dark and listening. I thought, this is never going to work. This is never going to, I just really I couldn't see how it was all going to come together. And I was thinking about the quote from Margaret Mead, never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world.
Yes.
In fact, it is the only thing that ever has.
Yes.
And I know we didn't change the world, but I think we made a huge contribution. And there's some things that we've already seen that have happened. And I had a lot of skepticism, honestly, these last 3 months that really feel like, wow, it did turn around. And I think the little seeds that we planted how many people did we talk to out in the community? The little seeds that we planted that we'll never know how those sprout, but that we really did have a big impact. So I feel really proud, and I really appreciate working with all of you. The unique perspective that each single person brought, each person did something that was completely unique to the whole thing that we pulled together. And so what an honor.
I'm getting emotional. That's a yes. And I was also like, wow, what an honor it's been. And thinking back to like when we first started, we were all strangers, like complete strangers. And we've spent 2 years of our lives together. To think about like when you brought up the subcommittees, like, oh my God, those were additional meetings and we just got through it. I think one of the things that not only is Julia Meyer is a perfect example of project management, and like every demanding thing that we put and all that pressure, you made it happen for our committee. And I want to thank you for giving us time with the counselors, with the staff, and pushing forward our accountability requests. Like that's not easy. And you've seen this transition start from the like dawn of, organizing charter reform, I believe, when I was looking into like how this whole came up. So I think you need a lot of kudos and to the future that Portland's gonna have because of this. I also like, I'm super grateful for, again, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I'm just grateful for all of you guys because you really did put in the time and effort. We read those like public comments and we talked about it. And like, while we didn't have a lot during our meetings, that doesn't negate the fact that we heard the public and we put it in front of the council at every step of the way. And while it's hard to be a public volunteer, you know, we didn't let that waver our work ethic. So thank you for sitting with my emotions, and it was an honor. I had a long day at work, so.
Well, I vote aye, and it's remarkable for me to see specific suggestions that I made and somebody listened and they're in this report. And I'm so accustomed to people discounting my ideas or stealing my ideas, and none of that happened. There were some things I suggested that didn't go anywhere, but just to see those specific things is really, really makes me feel heard, seen, and so forth. Two things is we've all talked about after 2 years, we feel like we've gelled and we're starting to gel with this council and they're kind of listening to us and actually asking us genuine questions and wanting information. How do we, you know, we're just going to drop off? How do we, I think we talked a little bit about distributing emails, but I think we do need some kind of avenue for them to stay in touch with us and continue to use us as a resource as much as we're available. The other thing is, like Bill said, I think we should get together at least once a year. And obviously the city's not going to be able to fund that, but we can do it informally. Wouldn't it be fascinating to get together once a year and just talk about it, especially after the next election in 2 years?
Yeah.
So, it just seems like we need a repository for the kind of the energy and the focus and the, you know, the like-mindedness of this group. Next.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm gonna vote yes. I know. Oh, shocker. I know. Deep sigh, everyone. This group has been amazing. I've enjoyed getting to know each and every one of you and learning from all of you. It is no understatement to say being a part of this committee just changed my life. I didn't realize it was like elections. I didn't realize I was a wonk for super detailed explanations of like fractions that people find terrifying. I love it. And that never would have happened without being a part of this and, you know, learning all of that. Beyond that, I'm just so proud to have been a part of this moment. This committee has been wonderful, but I can't stop thinking about everything that came before us. We are at the tail end of like a decades-long fight through the city to design a government that works for us. Like, citizens designed this government, citizens voted on putting it into place, and then we got to be here to be a part of the process to see it be implemented. And I'm so proud that we got to be here for it. I am, just to echo what other people have said, so incredibly thankful for Julia's efforts, recognizing that you've been here since before the beginning, like quietly in the background, making all of this happen. It's no small thing. And to the rest of the transition team too, I think you've heard me say it before. I feel like the best compliment that you can give is to say that something is boring with government. And this transition was about as boring as you can get, in that we have a government in place that's working. They're still figuring some stuff out, but like it happened and we got to be here and be part of it. So thank you all.
I guess it's no surprise that I'm also going to say yes to our report. And yeah, to echo Leah, yeah, it was a real privilege to be a part of this. And like you're saying, on the shoulders of a lot of work, both from the Charter Commission before us and kind of a lot of constituents and our fellow neighbors who we listened to, who had their own ideas and interest areas that we incorporated into our reflections and recommendations. So real privileged to be a part of this group. I tried my best to try to document all of the people who were on the transition team who supported us. So I hope I got all of them, but to Deanna and Tate and Jamie, James, Sophia, June,
Yeah.
Guillermo,
Yeah.
thank you very, very much for your support of this. You know, there was a lot of trepidation about us being the like megaphone of how to do public engagement. And I don't think I can speak on my own behalf that I would not have had the, I guess, confidence going into those spaces without your support. So thank you for that. And of course, Julia, for you kind of being the captain of this ship, so so to speak. So thank you for that. And yeah, I guess, you know, I think it's just a reflection of this work, like the charter and kind of like there's only so much that can be done structurally to fix government, and what fixes government is like passion and like the civic engagement, and it's reflected here in this group. It's clear, and yeah, I'm thankful to be a part of it.
So I thought the report turned out okay.
Somebody throw something.
So I'll vote yes.
We're gonna do better. I always can,
And
but I mean, we can.
I was gonna prepare something, but I didn't, so I'm gonna have to wing it a little bit. On the transition itself, I am cautiously optimistic. I don't think the council's transitioned yet.
No.
No, that's really.
I have, you know, concern about that, and I have concern that this expertise and this research that we did and our understanding of both Portland and other cities now is going to be lost unless some of us continue to go to governance committee meetings and that sort of thing. And I'll be there.
Yeah. No.
So, so yeah, so I think the transition itself the report was pretty good. The transition is coming along. But this experience has been great. I think the city now has created like 15 busybodies who know a bunch of stuff now, and that can only help the rest of the community. And so I think that's great. And I personally have met some really talented people around town. My goal in some of this really, and I've probably been to almost as many Zooms on charter issues as Julia. But but pretty close. Probably second
You were up there.
to me.
Where's Janice?
But I got involved in the charter commission level, partly because it's fascinating, partly because I wanted to learn my new city where I had just moved, and I just got completely sucked in. So I appreciate everyone's help in that. So that's mostly what comes to mind. I'm going to have to sit on it for a while, and I'll probably
That's surprising.
add in some lengthy blog posts. Anyway, I voted yes. I'm done here.
Well, I vote yes as well. When I think about this, I can't help but think of it on a few levels. For me personally, it was my reintroduction back to Portland. I went to school here and then lived in the Bay Area. And this was the first thing I've really done back in Portland. And it's been, somebody said, like a graduate education. It feels like it has been this investment of time that has felt incredibly rewarding and incredibly challenging. I think about my time as co-chair with Juliet and the meetings that we were able to have with counselors and just how satisfying it was to represent our work and will be going forward to represent our work. We really went out and talked to the community and we really put like our all collectively into going out and meeting the community and then elevating their voices. And I think that's something that I'm going to take with me for a long time. And I did a presentation last week that was just about democracy. And I noticed myself saying a bunch of the things from the GTAC presentation. And I was like, oh, like I've given that presentation so many times that it's like a part of me now in a way that I'm just extremely grateful and honored to be part of. And then as the city of Portland, where I went to university, I'm from Oregon, and it feels incredibly exciting to be part of the cohort that has worked on the project to make Portland better, with what's happening at the national level being just rancid. This is this incredible tonic, and I'm so incredibly proud of what we've done in Portland and what the transition team has done and the new council and everything that we're really trying to shake the Etch-a-Sketch, as I said like a million times throughout this process. I've said to many people, but I really believe this, that the real life cycle of this committee, I think, is going to be after this committee. I think the majority of our work and what we really put out into the world is going to develop in importance over time, as we saw at the governance committee, and as we all go on to continue to, I'm sure, be invested in the new form of government. Of course, thank you to Julia. Just incredible to watch your brain work and felt so well led in your hands, and yeah, the friends you made along the way, of course. And it's emotional. What are we gonna do with all my free time? Probably go to governance committee meetings.
I will start by thanking Julia and the transition team. I was co-chaired too many times between this cycle, my last cycle at the big meeting, and at the subcommittees. But part of the reason I did it is because the meetings with Julia were so good. I learned a lot, and you're always so good at allowing us to have discussion and being able to mold the agenda. It wasn't just given to us and you must take this. It felt like you were really part of the process. You were learning, but you were also part of it. So I appreciate it so much. And I think more than just us, like Destiny said, the city owes you a deal of thanks for everything you've done from the very beginning, which I guess fits right into what a little bit of reflection on the transition. It's not done, but I've already seen in just 3 months so many ways that this new form of government is benefiting the community at large. Some of you may or may not know, but I'm from District 1. And the thing is, the reason I like to say it a lot now is because people in District 1 are talking about this transition so much, because there were articles on KGW and OPB that this week about it, because they're feeling listened to for the first time ever. When I'm out and about in community, I see the city councilors all the time. I've seen all 3 of them more often in the last 3 months than I ever saw any of the city councilors in my whole 15 years of living in Portland, ever. It's like, it's a completely different world. So, and that's not going into the diversity of the council now and how many, the people that are sitting, there's so many things about this transition that we've already seen wins. So I know there's still lots of things that need to be ironed out. But if it's half as good as what we've seen so far, I think we're gonna continue in the right way. I think back up to where I was when we first started, because I was an alternate. And I also, I don't, yeah.
Me too.
Uh, I don't know who I told, but I remember learning that they expected us to do community engagement. I'm like, no, I don't do that. I was like, so people say it doesn't seem like it, but doing presentations and doing those things in front of people that I don't know, I was not into that. Like, I was not a person that wanted to do that. I didn't think I needed that. I was scared to do it. I think I ended up being one of the people that made the most presentations out in community. So not only do I think that we did good work, but I think the work did a lot of good for me. Like, I think it made me a better person and better at the things that I like to do. So I appreciate it so much. It brought something out of me that I didn't know I had. So yeah, so I'm very thankful for that. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for every time I disagree with Terry. Because I learned quickly that Terry and I were coming at it from almost like the same place, but just getting there differently. And it made me think about the things that I was saying in different ways and try to look at it differently. And it's easy sometimes in Portland, and I'm involved a lot in like political circles, but it's easy to be around people that always say and think the same things, but to be challenged from someone who also cares that we do a good job, and you know they're coming from a good place, makes you better as a person. So we did a lot of good work, and I think we're gonna continue to do good work. How do you feel how do you feel our time? Well, I've already applied for another thing, and like, it's because I'm like, well, now I have the time to do all the things. I mean, I think about how my life has changed. I wasn't on the school board. Now I'm on the school board. I would have never gone for it if I hadn't gotten the confidence of being able to do things like presentations, community engagement. You know, I'm on the state school board. I was on the Oregon School Board Association. So my life has changed since a lot. I've adopted a child. Like, that has nothing to do with this, but it shows how much we can change in just 2 years. And I appreciate you all being here for that journey. And I hope that the journey continues, that we don't lose touch. I tell the she's my favorite co-chair. No, I guess for 2 now. I feel like I've gotten relations outside of just this with you, and I want to continue that with everyone. And I hope we cross paths, not just socially, but in places like these, because I truly enjoyed working with all of you, and I feel like everyone brought something different to the table, which was lovely to see. So thank you.
And Jose, how do you vote?
I abstain. No, I vote yes.
Fred votes. Fred votes yes. It's wonderful listening to all of you actually for 2 years. It's hard to believe it's only been 2 years. It seems like it's been 10 actually.
Yeah.
Especially with our rough start. I thought we had a very rough start. The facilitators that were hired to help us really didn't know how to get us congealed and to work together. The first meeting, then we had the same group from the second meeting that didn't know what had happened at the first meeting. And as a group, we took it all into our own hands and decided what our rules of procedure were going to be and how we were going to work together. And then we were told by the mayor and the council that, no, we're not going to get into, we can't stick our nose into the org plan and how the government's going to change so dramatically. And so we came up with a work plan on our own and took our own initiative. And I sort of wish that Bill Bill had had the experience of having a contract with Wheeler and the council before, 2 years before the charter change about how to better budget and to better include the community and to do so much more in advance than wait until May when the council adopts it and you have no idea where you put any input in. And so I understand why he felt frustrated and quit. I feel sorry that Joe left us. I know he was frustrated because he kept wanting to help. How can we help you? How can we help you? I think we did help people, and he left just before the new council came in and listened to us. And I feel gratified that we have been listened to and we have helped. I feel like we've all been very responsible citizens. I feel like I'm a much better citizen now, even though I've lived in Portland since 1964. I maybe know it better. I'm not sure I want to dive into the nuts and bolts of the budget and the 7,500 FTE and their futures and all of that. But I feel like each of us, every Portlander, whoever is going to listen to this ever, can be assured that we're embarking on a new form of government with our eyes open and with faith in the future and faith in each other. I really, I know all my old wizened government buddies, politicians and administrators and city administrators from around the state. I said, oh, this is going to be a part of the expression shit show. I don't think so. Now, the hard times are ahead with the budget and we know all of that, but just seeing how the onboarding happened, the new council is working together. It ain't all kumbaya, we know that, but I think they're learning how to accommodate each other. I have faith in the younger people and certainly the younger people on this committee and the passion and intelligence and discipline that you have all brought to this, as well as us old seasoned, I won't say has-beens, but were onces. And I hope to participate more in what my district does.
Yeah.
And be again an ambassador for the new government to the community. And so I appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it over to Julia to tell us how the vote went. Maybe provide a few observations of her own of this process.
Well, it was 12 passes. I have a lot of reflections that might be hard to sum up. I have kind of been at the charter reform process a while. It's year 8.
Oh, yeah.
And after the Charter Commission, I definitely thought that I would leave city work, not leave Portland as a city. It had been accomplished. And I just couldn't do it, I think. There was a sense of responsibility of kind of being here for the 2-year period up until January 1st, 2025. And the Charter Commission talked a lot about that time frame. I think about that a lot. They sort of debated, should implementation be November 2024 or November 2026? And November 2024 was decided recognizing how compressed of a timeline that is to be responsive to the urgency that they felt Portlanders wanted the change in their government. And it was, that is a short timeline for government to transform itself. And there are so many folks on the transition team and a lot of other folks who work at the city who contributed to that. And Guillermo, which we're so happy to have, and so many other folks. But I was kind of lonely at first. I was like, where are the community members, right, to travel along, right, and to be the thought partner. And I'm glad, I know it came late, but I'm glad that the former council did put together an advisory body. And I hear you all talking especially about sort of the impact you've seen of your work over the last few months. There was a lot of impact this whole time, some of which you saw and some of which you didn't. You know, there was a lot of, I think someone mentioned this like earlier, but your presence and conversation went back to all the staff that implement this kind of day in and day out. And there was an internal accountability around that. And I know it wasn't always something that like we could come and present, this is kind of what changed internally, but it really did happen. And I think the second piece, other than the accountability, and you all have talked about this and it's in the final report, it's probably my biggest takeaway from working in government. The importance of transparency. You all brought that to the transition, and I don't know where else that would have come from. And I know you've all talked about it and it was highlighted, and I feel that too. I'm with you on that. It's so important. It can be hard sometimes for government day in and day out, and you really are that, I mean, to the extent there was transparency in this huge, complex, important public process, you were the drivers of that. And that is so incredibly important. So I just want to maybe just leave it with that. I am so grateful, everything everyone else said about you as individuals. The people, I am very aware of the folks who were here and who have left too, and kind of thinking about what that has meant and why that happens. And kind of how we take the learnings from that into the reforms moving forward. So thank you all so much.
For all of us, let's eat cake. Us eat cake. Jose.
Next slide, please. Okay. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website, as always, and no more. Our final meeting is the March 19th session of City Council. So we have one more thing we're doing. We should be on around 6:30, like Julie mentioned, maybe a bit earlier. And the item requested is 75 minutes as a reminder. If city leaders have questions for us after the session, Julia will be the one that reaches out to us individually. Next slide, please. So thank you everyone for your participation and your reflections and for the last 2 years. Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned.
Woohoo! Party on Friday, right?